Pupusas. I just love the way that sounds. Today we're making pupusas de chicharrón. Come on, let's get started.
Todo queda sabroso.
So pupusas are a Salvadoran dish. It is a dough made out of masa and it's stuffed with different ingredients. Today we're doing chicharron. But when I tell you, if you've never had pupusas before, you're in for a treat because they are delicious. Okay, so here we have pork shoulder. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into chunks and then we're going to marinate it. Okay, so to the pork, I'm going to add some lime juice, as well as some salt, some pepper, some oregano, about 3 bay leaves. And then I'm adding Loisa's newest sofrito, recadito. This is using the culantro, which is similar to cilantro, but it's much bolder and more aromatic. So adding a good tablespoon of that, maybe a tablespoon and a half. Gonna drizzle just a little bit of olive oil, just as a carrier. And there we have our pork. We're gonna marinate this for a couple hours. You can even do overnight. Okay, so to the sliced vegetables, I'm going to add 2 cups of water. Then we're going to add some apple cider vinegar, which I happen to infuse some pineapple into it. So we're adding 1 cup of that pineapple vinegar. I'm gonna add about 2 to 3 teaspoons of salt, as well as a teaspoon of oregano and 1 bay leaf. Then we're just going to mix everything together, making sure that all the vegetables get coated with that vinegar brine. I'm gonna press this down, making sure that brine comes to the top. Then we're going to cover it and then let it sit on the counter for 1 to 2 days, just so that it slightly ferments, and then it'll be ready for when we do our pupusas. Okay, so now we're going to prepare the chicharron. I have a saucepan that I'm going to add our marinated pieces of pork. Now I'm only using half of the pork that we cut up. The other half I'm using for another recipe. To this I'm adding about 4 cloves of garlic. So we're gonna start out on high and we'll allow that to braise for about 20 minutes and then you'll see the process begin to change. Okay, so as you can see, the meat is cooking, but it's also releasing that liquid. If you need to help it along, you can add some water, but don't allow it to come above the meat. And so I'm going to turn down the heat and then I'm going to cover it and let it braise for about 20 minutes to a half an hour. Okay, so while the pork is cooking, I'm doing a very quick, very simple salsa. I'm charring off some plum tomatoes, some onions, some garlic, and some jalapeno peppers. We're gonna add salt, cumin, little chicken bouillon. We're going to blend it and that's pretty much our salsa. Okay, so we're making the masa. I'm using 2 corn flours. The first is maseca, but then we also have masa arepa, which is traditionally used for making arepas. I like a combination of the 2. Okay, I don't know if you can see this, but this is the maseca on my right. This is the masa arepa on my left. It's hard to tell from this angle, but the masa arepa is just a little bit finer than the maseca, but I think the mix of the 2 is a good combination. We're gonna add 1 cup of the masa arepa and 1 cup of the maseca. To that, we're gonna add a teaspoon of kosher salt. Just give that a quick mix. And then the only final ingredient is water. I'm using warm water, and this is 1.5 cups. Then we're going to mix that around. Now, even though I used exact measurements, it's not an exact science when it comes to making masa though. For me, it all comes down to texture and how the dough looks. I added 1.5 cups of water, but as you can see, the masa is still dry. So I'm just going to add a little bit more water and I'll keep adding until I get to the consistency that I want. We're almost there. I'm gonna just add a little bit more water. That was half a cup, so in total, I used 2 cups of water. If I put it in my hand, I can press it out. I'm not seeing any cracks, so this is good for me. So I'm going to set this aside and finish our chicharron. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes, and you can see that all that water has evaporated, all that liquid, and now only oil remains, oil from the pork and the little bit of oil we added. And now we're going to start browning and frying those pork pieces, that chicharron. Give this a couple more minutes and we'll be ready for the next part. Okay, so I have my crispy chicharron. Here I have a small food processor. I broke my other one, so I'm stuck and relegated to this small one. But inside here I have red pepper, green pepper, red onion, and garlic, and I simply pureed it. And basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take those pork pieces, that chicharron, and put it in the food processor. I'm gonna do it in 2 batches. Pulse it. Like so, and then add the rest of the pork pieces. And there we have our chicharron mixture. Okay, the only other thing I have to add is mozzarella cheese. And I'm going to add about 2 cups. The rest I'll mix with my hands. Now we're ready to fill our pupusas. Okay, so we're gonna form the pupusa. I'm gonna take a handful of dough, shape it into a ball. Then I'm gonna make a pocket for the filling. Then I'm gonna take a handful of that filling, and I like to be generous with it. And then from there, we're just going to pull the dough up to the top, pressing down if you have to, and sealing in that meat mixture. And then if you have excess, you can just tear it off. We just pat it between our hands, flatten it out as we go along until you have a nice pupusa. And here we have our Pupusas de Chicharrón. Filled with that meat. Oof.